If you're anything like me, you grew up with a little something called Harry Potter, and you loved it. Waiting for our letters to Hogwarts to be finally liberated from our proverbial closets under the stairs was a thing that I think pretty much all 10-year-olds did way back then, myself included. And of course, when it didn't come because my documentation was lost in the Wizarding War, well, that was very disappointing. Now, many years later, Harry Potter isn't really a big or important part of my life anymore at all, to be honest, but I still do look back upon it with a lot of fondness. And when people ask, which, you know, they are prone to do on occasion, I can tell them with confidence that I am a Ravenclaw, and for many people I am in fact the Ravenclaw that they point to when they are asked, excuse me, but what is a Ravenclaw? So probably one of my favorite pastimes is to engage in my childish fantasies of being a hero, or, you know, rather not as much of a hero, but a complex and nuanced character, while playing pen and paper role-playing games. But the thing that you find out rather quickly when you look into this particular little subject matter is that though there are probably tens of thousands of different, systems for RPGs, and hacks of those systems of RPGs, and, you know, frameworks to construct your own RPGs within a lot of system-agnostic RPGs, there's really not any good one for Harry Potter. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot of terrible ones, ranging from making Shadowrun look like a rules-light system to, oh, it's just one line and it says, pretend to be a character from Harry Potter. There's even a handful of decent ones, some of which, although, to be fair, not many, I have played. And they're certainly fun, I do have to say, but they don't feel enough like Harry Potter, or they leave too little room for player creativity. There's some mechanically alright ones where it's about making a timetable in Hogwarts and going to school, which I have to be entirely honest with you, I don't really care about that. Look, if that's the kind of game you enjoy, more power to you, but at 26, I kind of don't want to play pretend going to school anymore, personally. Though, to be fair, even when I was a kid, I found all of the things happening outside of Hogwarts a lot more interesting than all of the things that were happening inside of Hogwarts. As you know, it's not to say that I didn't think that Hogwarts was cool and all that, but even knowing today that the larger scale world building and the world building in general, but especially the larger scale world building of J.K. Rowling is rather shit, I've not been discouraged from finding all that stuff highly fascinating. I mean, fucking, right? All of sub-Saharan Africa has one wizarding school, and it's called fucking Wagadagadoo. You see, there's a problem with the Harry Potter universe in that it is uniquely unsuited to be turned into an RPG. And the main reason for that is that, at least theoretically, any wizard can cast any spell. Now, in practical terms, this isn't really necessarily always the case. Some wizards are just straight up more powerful than others, and they can do spells that require more juice, although the rules on that also not really all that clear in any of the books, and sometimes it's questionable if that is even the case. I mean, yes, sure, Dumbledore was able to summon a big fucking water elemental to fight Voldemort, but Harry just said one word and just summoned a bunch of hellfire that was so powerful it destroyed a Horcrux. So, which I think the water elemental, as powerful as it was, wouldn't have been able to do. But you know, you can't do the whole Cruciatus thing unless you really truly want someone to suffer, and you can't just Avada Kedavra a motherfucker either. Other requirements for other spells are not explored all too, except for the one where you have to have a fond memory of something to do a Patronus, which I wouldn't be certain which one I would pick because I don't really have any. But as far as they're explored, they're not explored too much. There's just like a handful of ones where it's a plot device, and there it's important. Fundamentally, any wizard can attempt any spell, and that's a problem. I mean, sure, you could, have differences in the builds of the plays, and that you have certain characters that specialize in certain kinds of spells and get whatever bonuses you will apply to whatever RNG system that you're gonna implement. But the fundamental problem that this actually carries is that every single player needs to know every single spell by heart and have to have it, off the top of their head. And I actually went through the list with a clicker, and let me tell you, there's 307 of them. 307 documented spells across all Harry Potter media. And these include incredibly specific spells, such as one that makes snakes disappear, or one that turns your ears into kumquats, or my personal favorite, one that makes you shoot sardines out of your nostrils. This doesn't even touch upon potions, magical artifacts, divination, and knowing about magical plants and creatures. This is also assuming that the spells that are documented by the fan community that have been shown to people are the only ones that exist, which we know for certain is not the case. No wonder they don't have, like, fucking time for English class in Hogwarts. This is a very busy, it's like a university education from first grade. Now, to be fair, in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, if you take all of the books that have come out that are official, you put them together, you have a list of 502 turtle spells, all of which are described in rather a lot more detail than the Harry Potter ones. And theoretically, a wizard could learn every single one of those, which of course would be highly impractical because they would have to find all of them and then expend the resources and time to learn every single one of them, which is like a lot. But even if that had theoretically happened, a level 20 wizard that has like maxed out intelligence can only have 25 of those spells prepared at any given time. And this is at a point in the game when the player has spent hundreds of hours with that character, their spellbook, manually, selected, found, understood spells that they transcribed and have used in the campaign. A wizard that's starting out has like 3 to 5 spells. So for Harry Potter, even if you pare it down to only the spells we have like names for, that we have certain formulas for in the books and movies, not even any of the extended universe stuff, not even the new movies, it's 75. And players would have to know and understand these very well from the very first session. It is completely unreasonable, even for seasoned Harry Potter fans who are still very much in the universe, to know all of those spells. But even if you somehow managed to download that knowledge into people with one of them Neuralink microchips, you still wouldn't be working within the complete confines of the law, because it is a well-known fact that you can make new spells, you can cast spells without really knowing what it is they actually do, and there are some theories and interpretations that also say that you can basically come up with spells on the spot. And let's be honest, those scenes, and especially those fights, are the most interesting. If what you do essentially is just shoot stew pauses and Expelliarmuses at each other for half an hour, it becomes a very tabletop experience. It becomes a lot more about like strategic positioning on the battlefield to, work with these specific given parameters. You could easily just replace the magic wands with laser guns and you would have the same experience. Personally, I think that magic, the ability to do pretty much anything, should be interesting, and it should, work with like finding specific synergies, finding clever solutions to problematic situations that you find yourself in. Look, just because there's a lot of guns in the battle doesn't mean the battle is epic. I mean, you saw the duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort in the Ministry of Magic, which I cannot show any clips of because of the new copyright law that is now in place in Germany. It's amazing. The one that the Order of Phoenix one, exactly that one. But to achieve this, you would have to go with an entirely freeform magic system, which is, something that a lot of systems that go about wizarding and magic, they do that. This also gets rid of the problem where players need to memorize a million spells. But at the same time, because you no longer have those spells, you lose a fuck ton of flavor. And also, and frankly this I think is even more important, even like Mage and Ars Magica and all of those systems have certain limitations on what kinds of spells individual characters can cast, which Harry Potter does not. You don't need to have special training in waterbending magic to attempt or even be good at the waterbending magic. You can just say, "Camus shotus," and liquid will bust out of your wand. So if you impose any of those limitations that are in those games specifically to make them interesting, you would be going against established Harry Potter lore. And even if somehow, through magic, you managed to implement such a thing, players will always just use that in order to fuck with you, and they will never use any of the flavorful spells from the books because they only remember 5 of those and 3 of them are illegal. Mostly they're just gonna find not even clever but just brute force stupid solutions to the problems that you put in their path, and they're gonna be very good at that. You can't just allow characters to go ahead and do whatever, be able to just do anything. It confuses players and it doesn't make for interesting games. But also, you can't really limit the characters because in the lore, they can do whatever. You see the problem, right? I've been repeating this a lot, but this is the fundamental problem. And this doesn't even hit on the problems for which there are potential solutions, but all of them are rather inelegant. For example, the premise of Harry Potter is generally that there is a spell for almost anything. You don't really need to move or be athletic, yet the characters are that anyway, and you don't need to know too much stuff outside of magic, yet the characters do that anyway. So what kind of stats, if any, would you use to represent the character's abilities? Would intelligence be one of those stats? If so, it would in every character build have to be the highest level stat, because it would be, or whatever stat you would associate with being good at doing magic. Because if you don't have that as your highest stat, you would be drastically underpowered because all of the characters are wizards. So even if you use the magic thing and put that into various different stats, do you also include the kinds of stats that go for purely physical abilities? Because even there, you have a character that, like, you put at all points in being athletic, they can swim really good. Some other character where is very low in athletics has to cast one spell and they can blow them out of the water. And really, spells are overall so powerful that they will overshadow any kind of physical activity unless you are in an isolated setting where spells are not possible, and the only one that comes to mind for that is Quidditch. Which, just as a side note to whoever is in charge of that kind of shit, please remake the Quidditch video game that existed. It's been 17 years, no sequel. Please remake this or do sequel. Make new game that is this, because it was very good and I really enjoyed it. It was the best. I think about it once a month at least, even many 17 years later without a sequel. Please do it. Now, I could find solutions for all these problems. Absolutely. But they wouldn't be very elegant, probably. They might be clunky, they might be a little too complicated to compensate for the fact that how, imbalanced the value of the various different stats are. You'd have to be very good at game design, certainly better than I am, to actually, do that. And it's a microcosm of the larger scale problem that Harry Potter poses in terms of design challenges. It's not that you have a narrow path between freedom and flavor, it's that the two are basically mutually exclusive. And it's not like people haven't tried. It's not like a lot of people have not tried. It's a huge franchise. Now, just for the record, I don't think that this is an impossible design challenge. It's just that I've been thinking about this for several years, and not only have I not come up with solutions, I haven't been able to come up with vague ideas for solutions. Now, of course, I'm not a professional game designer, but I've been doing game design as a hobby for a while. It'll probably require a completely new approach that is utterly detached from all the game design philosophies we have right now, maybe including some of the minor elements from there, and that kind of innovation, especially from people who are essentially, no one's gonna get an official Harry Potter license, so why bother? It's very hard to come by that level of new innovative innovation redundancy. And also, just for the record, and I know people are gonna get very mad at this, that I didn't talk about this at the very beginning of the video instead of the thing that I actually wanted to talk about in the video, because this is a video about Harry Potter, and in every Harry Potter video that you make, you need to mention this. I don't care that J.K. Rowling is a disgusting turf cunt when it comes to discussing Harry Potter. That is something I can criticize J.K. Rowling for. And I think it's disgusting and transphobic, but it's not something I can criticize Harry Potter for, because Harry Potter is a series about going to a school where they teach you to, swish the wooden magic stick good, not a series about being trans. I am of course aware that if you approach those books with the preconceived notion that absolutely they are all about being transphobic, you will find interpretations of things that happen there which are allegorically somehow related to trans bad. However, I would like to remind everyone that the same is true if you approach the books with the preconceived notion in mind that they're all about Return to Monkey. Harry Potter will forever have been a very important and influential part of my childhood, and for that I will always think it's very cool. Especially the 2003 video game Quidditch World Cup, please remake it. And I know that you feel personally offended that someone you admired has terrible ideas that are disgusting and bad. You'd be surprised how many people I used to respect put pineapple on their pizza. Frankly, I personally believe that completely and utterly radically distancing yourself from something that you and I both know used to be a major part of your personal identity because you took the perceived betrayal of someone who neither knows you exist nor cares you exist very personally is not exactly the behavior of an emotionally balanced human being. And I can only laugh at the people who are now very loudly going, "Oh no, JK bad and always has been," when they're the exact same people who used to ignore/defend every single one of the possible criticisms, of which there are many, of her work. That's basically like going on Twitter and saying Dumbledore was gay all along. It's not a valid play, and no one will take you seriously. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. And in that spirit, separate the author from the work. There's a lot of terrible people out there who have done great creative work. Take from it what you want to take from it, and then run with that. Condemn them for being bad people, but realize that the world is a bit more complex and you can't just stuff everyone in a box. And see you around, cunts.